All
for
right.
sure.
So how have things been for you as a candidate since you decided to be independent in this coming election?
Yeah, things have been really good actually. And this, my candidacy is not new,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I've been gearing up for this for the last 4 years.
Yes.
I've told, the constituents here, Peace River North and up in the Northern Rockies, that I was going to run. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nothing has really changed in regards to my commitment to the
Mm-hmm.
folks that, that live in this region. Obviously, kind of the approach and the way that we're moving into how we campaign has changed. But generally speaking, my commitments are no different. My commitments still remain the same, and that's to all the residents to bring my experienced leadership to Victoria and do the best job that I'm able to do, which I've shown that I'm able to do, and will continue to do that. So it's been really good. So much positive feedback on the doorsteps, at events. It's going great, and looking forward to the official campaign kicking off here very soon.
Yes, that's wonderful to hear. And that's on the 28th, right? Is
Yeah.
that's
No, the
final day?
21st.
21st, yes.
21st is when the actual writ drops for the 28-day campaign.
Oh, yes. And then the 28th is the final day for candidates to be announced.
Anyone to come in, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
You spoke about this a little bit during your announcement that I was at, but what kind of motivated you to stay in the running as an independent?
Well, and again, in my previous question, I have always been committed to running, right? Obviously, it's a big story what happened. It was not my decision to stop the race in the projection that we had under the BC United. In essence, the carpet was pulled out from under us. And it's in speaking to, and I mean hundreds and hundreds of people, everybody's saying, Dan, we need a choice. You need to stay on the ballot. And the overwhelming support for me to continue in that regard, to continue again my experienced conservative leadership that I have, to make sure that I am doing the best job and we have the best voice in Victoria moving forward, and that is my commitment.
Wonderful. And so let's get right into the questions, shall we? So as I mentioned, these were all presented to us by readers. So the idea of this is, as I have more access to politicians such as yourself, these are questions that our readers and our listeners would ask if they had you unoccupied for 20 minutes, which of course is difficult to get, especially in this month.
Especially right now, it's really busy.
All right, so the first one is, how do you plan to reform the healthcare system, specifically so that all northeastern BC residents get equal access to care?
Yeah, well, this has been one of my priorities when I was first elected to City Council in 2005, and it has been a main priority of mine since I've been the MLA. Access is really important up here, and people understand that. We're not going to have a heart surgeon or a neurosurgeon here or in Fort Nelson or whatever, but that equal access to healthcare I think is what is really, really important. And we hear over and over again people having to leave the community. There's no support for people to leave the community. The long wait lists that we have. We need to be addressing those situations. Making sure that we're hiring more doctors, bringing more local decision making back into our healthcare system. Because right now, of course, everything is done at the health authority level in Prince George through Northern Health, or in the Ministry of Health in Victoria. We used to have local health boards that were very successful, that had people, again, making decisions locally that were in the best interest of people that lived up here, not someone in Victoria or in Vancouver. We need to move them aside and bring that decision making back here to the Peace region, so we can make the right decisions, find the right resources, and make sure that we are, moving forward with patient-centered care. Because right now it seems like it's everything but the patient that is the center of the issue. So we need to make sure that we're looking at that and moving forward there.
Okay. And on a similar line, what will you do to address healthcare staffing shortages experienced specifically in our region?
Well, again, I go back. This goes back when I first got elected on City Council. Fighting for better healthcare, fighting for more nurses, fighting for more doctors, and You know, and part of it is, you know, my record on city council. You know, I was fighting very hard to make sure that we got the nurse training program up here, and then continued that as when I was elected as the MLA. And happy, you know, to say that my partnerships that I've built over the years that I've lived here, born and raised here in Fort St. John, working with Northern Lights College, working, you know, as a city with the university, with the government, we actually, you know, started producing students, nursing students up here in 2019, and most of them have stayed locally because that's a really important concept. Is, you know, if you train someone locally, they're going to stay because they're, you know, they're invested in this community. They're here, and we're not going to be dictated by Victoria or Prince George on how to do things. Again, we, you know, these were local solutions that we brought forward to the table, and we need to make sure that we're bringing those local solutions forward. You know, we need to look at a whole bunch of other. I mean, you know, that healthcare is a very complex issue right now, and you know, we have people that are foreign trained that are living here in Fort St. John, throughout BC and Canada. You know, that are underemployed in their fields. You know, we need to be looking at how can we look at their skills and their skill set that they have wherever that is. And I'm talking, you know, it might be India, it might be China, it might be Ireland. People are having huge challenges bringing those credentials to Canada, and it's not right. There needs to be a way that we can actually fast track people through a system and get them, you know, into the healthcare system that we need. So there's a number of ways. Education is another big one. We don't have enough spots in university in British Columbia to train doctors up. Residency spots, we don't have enough to get people those pieces that they need to move forward. So there's a lot of work to be done. I've been continuously advocating to work through these things. We've got movement in some areas, you know, and that is my commitment to the entire region, that I'll continue to fight for better healthcare for everyone, because it is probably one of the top, well, certainly the number one issue that I receive at my office as the MLA right now.
And certainly as a reporter watching all of the closures and everything, it's definitely something that normal, everyday, everyone is focused on.
Well, you know, and this is really interesting, just talking about the closures, whether, you know, even Fort St. John, you know, we've had a dozen, Fort Nelson, our neighboring communities throughout the region. This is not new. Sorry, this is new.
Yeah.
Like, this is a new issue. You know, Fort Nelson prior to 2017, and you know, coincidentally or not, I mean, that was the new government came in. There was never a closure up there. It was a full service hospital, and you know, it has become now a regular. You know, you don't know when your emergency is going to close. You know, we have not had closures ever in the Fort St. John Hospital until early this summer. Those are new. So this is a new issue. That if we don't jump on it now and get it under control, it's only going to get worse. And this is where, you know, I've been, you know, advocating for, you know, all the residents, you know, pushing Adrian Dix, you know, to, you know, do real changes. Don't just make fluffy announcements. We need, you know, pull our sleeves up and let's get to work and fix the problem.
No, absolutely. And how will you continue investing in natural resources while respecting Indigenous rights and climate change?
Well, first of all, we need to, you know, government needs to take their thumb off the scale when it comes to, you know, decision making right now, and you know, and how they are moving forward in creating a climate in British Columbia that is investment friendly. We are not alone in the world. British Columbia is just, you know, it's a region, you know, it's a jurisdiction that, you know, that is competing with Alberta to our, you know, our neighbors to the east, the United States, the world. And, you know, these companies that are looking for, you know, they're looking for safe investment places. They're looking for places that have good employment standards and healthcare and, you know, human rights and stuff. And we have all that. But when you get a government that just keeps putting red tape up in front of, you know, in front of industry, in front of these investors, you create this exodus. People are going to leave. They're going to go elsewhere where it's easier to do business. And we've seen that already in British Columbia. So we need to start reversing that. Reducing red tape, creating a investment climate that is positive. You know, our First Nations communities here, and I have a good relationship with all of them. They also want economic development too. And, you know, unfortunately, we've seen the NDP create bad policies, divisive policies that have created a permit paralysis, if you will, in British Columbia across the province. Certainly up here when we're talking, the natural gas sector, the challenges around forestry. We've just seen our mill shut down here in Fort St. John due to they can't get fiber. Mining opportunities that are potentially up in the northeast part of British Columbia, north of Fort Nelson. These are big issues that the government has created these roadblocks, and we need to start looking at, if we want a good education system or a better healthcare system, a system that will look after people that are vulnerable. We can't do that if we don't have an economy that's functioning. And right now, we don't have an economy that's functioning properly because of all of this red tape that the government's come in. And every opportunity, and I speak often in the legislature and at different events and such, I am always with that same message. Listen, government, you need to be building relationships with these companies and listening to them. What do they need to get across the line? We don't need to sacrifice all the great things. We have great environmental standards in British Columbia. We have good human rights. We have good paying jobs and all that stuff. We don't, and again, this is why people want to invest here because of that. But government just makes it impossible to move forward, and the government needs to recognize that. And there's been a few little changes recently. Maybe it's because the election's coming up, and they see the writing on the wall. But there is good things moving forward slowly. We just need to make sure that we are continuing to push the government forward in making sure that we have, working with nations, working with industry, working with people to make sure that our economy, especially our economy up here, within natural gas, forestry, mining, even agriculture, even tourism, right? They all struggle when you get a lot of red tape, right? They all struggle. So we need to make sure that we are that we are reducing that. So that is one piece. Wildfire mitigation. We've seen a number of wildfires over the last few years. Again, a lot of that comes down to, mitigating our forest and managing our forest. We've done a horrible job at it. And I've written numerous letters. I've spoke with the Minister of Forests. I've had meetings with ministry staff, different agencies that work up here within forestry throughout the province, that we need to be doing prescribed burns. We need to be talking to people on the ground that understand how do we manage our forest better, to better our climate, better what our forests look like, better how our wildlife management is handled. All of those pieces, we need to be looking at them as serious pieces of how the government manages forests. And they're not doing that, quite frankly. They haven't done it I could even look at, even previous governments throughout time, doesn't matter the stripe, hasn't done a really good job at managing our forests, managing our wildlife and such. The other piece, and, as a founding member of the FSJ for LNG back, about 8-9 years ago when we were all pushing for those LNG facilities on the coast, I think that is an important way that we can move coal-dependent countries such as China, India, who are producing half of the carbon emissions in the world, how we can actually move them into a low-carbon world by using our natural gas. And at the same time, looking at, reducing those global emissions and creating good jobs for us. I mean, it's a win-win-win-win situation for all of us if we can move forward with that. And, I am quite happy to see that LNG Canada's come online right now. The Cedar LNG has been approved. There's another one north of Prince Rupert, wood fiber. So it is good to see these things moving forward, but we need to be proud of that and looking at there's a contribution that British Columbia is making on reducing emissions around the world.
No, it's a wonderful way to look at it. And this kind of ties in a little bit what we were talking about earlier, but what will you do to address housing affordability?
Yeah, housing affordability looks different everywhere. Our issues are very different than what they are in Vancouver, Kelowna, or Victoria. Yeah. I would say the biggest housing issue we have up here is seniors housing, a shortage of affordable seniors housing. And, I've had, many conversations with seniors advocates up here. In fact, I just recently had my seniors expo, earlier this summer. We had the provincial seniors advocate up here who was also looking at some of the issues and seeing how different it is up here. But we have a critical shortage of independent housing, long-term care facilities. We're looking at doing that. We need the expansion to happen at Peace Villa, the third house there, to catch up with those that are aging. And people are wanting to age at home. They don't want to leave their grandchildren. They don't want to leave their families, in this community or this region, to go, into, doesn't matter where it is, in the interior or down south. So we need to be looking at, this population that wants to stay now. They don't want to move. They want to be close to their family. So how do we support them? How do we bring in those partnerships, working within government, building on partnerships that I've built up over the years with private industry that want to build these things. And we're seeing one success, Harlequin City Centre, right, as a seniors facility, and bringing those partnerships and working with the city. We can do great things, but you need that conduit, you need that relationship, and that is what I bring when it comes to my own experience leadership that I've built, not only 7 years as an MLA, but 13 years as city council, community advocate my entire life that I've grown up here. Those relationships that I've built, not only throughout this region, but across Western Canada, all throughout British Columbia, are invaluable when it comes to talking about housing, talking about all these other things that we've just talked about. That experienced leadership, the partnerships that I've built are critical for seeing us prosper in the future.
Definitely. And what is your stance on education and the curriculum?
Well, this is an easy one for me. I'm a former school teacher.
Yep.
In my previous life, seems like 100 years ago now. I was the shadow minister for education in the provincial legislature. I have two kids that one's just graduated last year, and one's just into his high school journey now, middle school, high school. And so I have a really diverse, from working within the system, being on the legislative governmental side, as well as being a parent.
Yeah.
And that gives me a pretty good range of how things work. But I think at the end of the day, what parents want is their kids to be focusing on math and reading, science and technology, so that we can be producing great people that are entering the world with all the tools that they need. And I'm a big believer that we need to kind of get back to those basics in many ways. Obviously, school plays an important social function, and that is really relevant. But we need to start focusing and getting back to what British Columbia, not so long ago. Actually, when I was first elected, we had the top education system in the world. People from other countries would come to British Columbia and see, man, they're doing a really good job. Like, let's look at this. We've lost that. We've lost our way in the last 7 years. And, my role, certainly as the education critic, shadow minister, was, be going to government and saying, what are you guys doing? You're going down a path that, that most British Columbians don't want to see. Certainly, a lot of our kids that feel they're not equipped well enough when they graduate, we need to start fixing that. And it's certainly not too late, to do that. I think the other thing that parents want to also see is, things that are age appropriate and age relevant. And there's been lots of discussions around that. And I think that's an easy fix. We just need to make sure that, what is appropriate for that age? How do we engage parents? And I think there's been a huge feeling by parents that they've been left out of the conversation. I know our local school districts worked hard to make sure that they're trying to include parents in those decision makers. Teachers are trying to make sure that they're doing the best, the best that they can to bring things forward. So I think that's another piece that we need to be continuing to drive forward, is that parent involvement, age appropriateness throughout K to 12. We've done really well up here on our trades program, apprenticeships and such. We need to make sure that we continue to support that. There's a huge shortage, doesn't matter if on the professional side or trade side, there's a huge shortage, across Canada, across the world. So these partnerships, again, that I've worked with throughout the years, within the school district, within industry, making sure again that through good leadership, you're bringing people to the table and building that sense of community and getting things done. And we've done that. Fort St. John is a getter done, and Fort St. John in the region is a real getter done kind of a community, and we've seen the successes of that, and we need to continue to support that. Teachers. I was just speaking to some folks at the school district. Huge shortage this year in particular. They're really short teachers, TOCs, educational assistants across the board. It's kind of like healthcare, right? We're short these critical professionals. We need to make sure that there is sustained funding coming to the school district so that they can, retain people to stay in the community. I know the city of Fort St. John's done a great job at, providing a great community, because if you are bringing people from another area, you need to not only recruit the individual, you need to recruit the family. And, by having, the amenities that we have here, that makes it a lot easier for a family to come here and say, oh, Fort St. John's a great little community. There's a lot of stuff to do. I know there's conversations around the pool, our rec facilities that we have, access to the outdoors. I mean, these are all great things, and the city's embracing those. So is industry, so is the school district, to try and bring people up here. The other thing is, as well as, our First Nation education, our numbers have improved quite a bit over the last number of years, but we need to make sure that we are looking at, culturally appropriate, materials in the school that, can also see great successes grow in their communities as well.
All right. And on a similar line as the last two, what's your plan for investment in infrastructure for our region?
Well, I'd be remiss if I did not mention the Taylor Bridge. It's probably the number one issue that we've been, fighting for, hearing about. I have brought it up in the legislature, and we've been bringing this up. Even when I was on city council, there was talk about the Taylor Bridge. I know councils throughout the region have talked about it, but it is a big issue, and we need to continue to push it. I'm committing to try and push government to get shovels in the ground by 2026. I don't think that's unreasonable. There's been a lot of work already done on it. Just recently, I've had many conversations with the Minister of Transportation and ministry staff who have kept me up to date on some of the stuff happening. But I think we're at a place now where they have all the information they need. Let's just get it done. I mean, this is a major, transportation corridor. There's a lot of heavy industrial equipment that goes across that bridge, and it's not just us, quite frankly. I mean, this is the main corridor that's, that opens up into the Yukon, into Alaska.
Yeah.
And I've written some letters, and I always make sure that I'm CCing the governor of Alaska, the premier of the Yukon, because it is important for them as well.
Yeah.
So it is a huge important piece of infrastructure that we need to make sure that we're continuing to fight for. I know all the municipalities are on board. Every time they're talking to government, the Taylor Bridge comes up. Everybody in Victoria is very aware of the Taylor Bridge through, again, through the leadership that I've provided, my voice that I've provided down there, as well as the municipalities across the region. But that's very localized. There's a lot of other big issues. I was just up in Fort Nelson this week having conversations about, there's so much potential in Fort Nelson, whether we're talking the natural gas sector with the Horn River or Liard. The potential of forestry, a virtually untouched fiber supply up there. The potential that I mentioned earlier, the mining up in the northeast, north of Fort Nelson. These are amazing opportunities, but the rail line between here and Fort Nelson, quite frankly, sucks. It is deteriorated. There's limited capacity on the line. The time that it takes to move up there, it is enough to have companies say, until that's done, we can't really invest.
Yeah.
So I've been working hard with the CN Rail, reaching out to the federal government, reaching out, obviously, lots of discussions with the provincial government, industry players, First Nations, How do we build this plan? How do we get that done? Because it is the key to economic viability in Fort Nelson. And there's been some movement. The federal government is very interested in looking at investing in that. Some private industry will obviously just see what everyone else does. We're trying to work on the province to come to the table as well. That is one of my commitments, is that we would work with government to bring matching dollars to the federal government, so we can start getting that rail line done. The water system in Hudson's Hope, I've been working on it now for the last year. The last two mayors, working very closely with them, bringing government to the table with the mayor and council, bringing BC Hydro to the table. And, quite frankly, BC Hydro and the provincial government has failed Hudson's Hope. And it is there, and I've been saying this since the start. I think I did a interview here, a number of months back with Energetic and Moose, talking about, this, none of this would happen if it wasn't for Site C. And circumstances have led to, Hudson's Hope now not having safe drinking water. Yeah. It is still the responsibility of BC Hydro and the government to make sure that that community has safe drinking water. And that's, I've committed just recently again to the mayor of Hudson's Hope just a couple of days ago, that I'll continue to fight and push and bring people together to make sure that, we can get that water system sorted out. The railway crossing and little things that, just fix the rail crossing in Taylor. These aren't major projects, but huge inconveniences for anybody who's traveling through the district of Taylor, bottoming their vehicles out on the rail crossing. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff up here, but a lot of it goes back to what I talked about, earlier. We need to get our economy going, and that, that's the LNG piece, and, getting that piece going, that is obviously going to, allow the government to have the revenue to do some of these things.
Certainly.
I could talk for hours on infrastructure up here in the north, but
yes,
yeah, lots of stuff going on. And, and I got to use this one line, and we've seen this over and over again, as, our present government almost has a don't dig, don't cut, don't drill kind of an approach. And it's hurting all of us, right? The government, I mean, we've seen a over almost $6 billion deficit this year, that the government's revenues, they just can't make money. And, I don't know about your pockets, mine are empty. There's no more room for the government to reach into them. So the government needs to be looking at, how does the government make money? Well, that's by looking at the resource sector and, having a good resource sector, so that we can pay for these infrastructure projects. We can, hire teachers, hire doctors, and such. So the government has a lot of work to do, and I'm certainly, going to hold them account.
Wonderful. And on that note, as the final question, are you willing to work across party lines or with other independents to best represent your constituents?
100%. I've always done that. And this election that we're going into is about experienced leadership that is going to deliver results for Peace River North. I've proven that, not only as the MLA for the last 7 years, but even as city council. And even before that, I've always been about building community, building bridges, not tearing them down, creating, cooperation, with groups, whether, when I was the vice president of our the Fort St. John Legion, working 20 years with the cadet program, driving truck, I'm a truck driver, by trade, and, working with people to get the job done. And that is no different in this capacity. It's, how do I best get the job done? And, it is something that it is certainly a strength of mine, is building partnerships, building relationships. Again, not only here in this region and across the province, but, quite frankly, across Canada and even into the United States, where I've built partnerships and brought people together to, get something across the line. And obviously in partisan politics, not everyone is going to agree. Not everyone is going to agree in our system of partisan politics. But, we can come together and get big things done. And a lot of that starts with conversations, a handshake, and just discussing our commonalities, not necessarily starting off with our differences, because I don't think, we can get a lot further with what we have in common than we can on the other way. And I believe that when we bring people together, we can actually get business done in the legislature. And I've seen it. I mean, again, that's what I do bring, with my experience, forward, is I can build those relationships. I can talk to people. I can get that bridge to, move things forward. And as an independent, even more so, because I'm, uninhibited by, a lot of the structures that are in place that have traditionally been in place. So it's exciting moving forward. I'm looking forward to, again, bringing my experience, continued experience to the table and getting things done for Peace River North.
Wonderful. And that was all of them.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And those were wonderful answers.
Thank you.